one of the worst moments in the visual arts, and even for me to talk about because it's disgusting, is the Beast Woman. Again, we have seen how men would objectify women and reduce her as a merchandise. And here is something similar, trying to represent her as the nature, is that we can see images like this one. And because the main, I guess, dichotomy is that it's man culture versus woman nature. And as we have seen, nature for men, it's the senses and it's everything that is wrong with the society. So we can see here how the woman is portrayed completely naked and even as in a tiger's pose or in a feline pose in order to represent her erotism. Nov contrasts the dignity of the man, which is the purity, versus the angel spirituality of the woman's bestiality. And we can see this in several paintings, the Sphinx, as we saw it almost at the beginning of this presentation. I might put a couple of more paintings. And also, everything reduces to man, spirit, intellect against woman, materialism, nature. This is another painting that I find quite disgusting and horrible, but it represents how these men could feel about women, and it's how in this one, for example, you see all the women naked and in animal poses, while the man is fully dressed, and you could even argue that in a formal dressing, taking note of the behavior of the women. It is very disgusting, to say the least. The Sphinx, it's a great piece and someone that unalives young men. This is one of the representation of the beast women. The emblem of this will be the perverse, the mystery, and the sexuality. Turop will contrast the beast woman with the good woman, but it's the first one, the one that subjugates and enslaves. And we can see it in this painting, or I think it's a grabado. I will look for a translation. And because we can see that the Sphinx, which is what we can see the most, it's this huge head with the claw on the corner. I mean, I will be censoring it, but the breasts that are always very significant in the Sphinx, with a daring look at the audience, while on this side we have a small, delicate woman. It's a way of representing women in general, like even one woman that has these two sides. The potential of being this delicate flower, but chooses, or it's more as in the evil side is the one that always dominates her because it's in her nature. That is pretty much the discourse they used. There are these other ones. Now will be even more misogynistic, since the knight, even though it's kind of asexual, is spitting the creature which looks to have the face of a woman. I mean, we can also infer that because of her hair, her long hair, and it's giving away to her instincts. And this Sphinx is giving away to her instincts because of the facial expression she gets when she's pet. Also, I mean, I don't know if you can fully notice, but you can see how even the knight has some light surrounding him, which could be another way of saying the light being has to deal with this beast. Robs uses humor for the caricature of the devil, who has a big member looking at the woman that is hugging the Sphinx. Even though Robs contrasts the Sphinx and the woman, he still makes them allies. So for Robs, are two different beings, the Sphinx and the woman, which I guess it's a little better. But because they are allies, it's pretty much the same thing. It's like how we saw at the beginning that the women and the reptiles are allies. That's the same representation. And well, yes, we can see the devil. I find it hilarious, the picture. It's, I mean, again, it's ingenious. Then we have other representation of these things. One is in the Art Nouveau style. And I found it funny because Erika Bornay found this particular one as bad taste. I thought it was creative enough, but it's because we see the Sphinx in the foreground, and that's 5 women, well, 5 heads, turning and looking at the scenery, which is the degradation of men. And she's also holding, or not holding, but she has a bunch of skulls below her as a representation that she is the one that has degraded men to the point of unaliving them. And she's just there watching as if there is nothing else to do, or because she's not even enjoying it. That's why I don't feel it's that much of bad taste. I mean, I think there are other paintings which are much worse than this one, so I don't know. And if you haven't noticed already, there is a crowd like framing the heads. There is this other representation of the Sphinx, which is more as all evil and destroying the man. She's evil because she has these huge wings, and her expression is quite determined and even furious in a way. Now let's talk about Medusa. Medusa, she could be portrayed with hair of snakes, sharp claws, and occasionally with wings. They like to portray decapitations, as we have seen, in different moments with different characters, different styles. And it's also, in this particular Medusa, it's repulsive reptiles as her hair, maybe to symbolize the destruction and evil of the woman's hair. I mean, the Medusa story, I think it's quite common, or more well known than the other ones. Although I didn't know she could be represented with wings, but probably it's because, I mean, the mythology changes, like with the mermaids. I didn't know also that originally they had the head and chest of a woman and the body of a bird, but at some point it changed to become the woman fish that we all know nowadays, and that it's the most popular version of it. Here is a painting of the original mermaids. I find it quite funny how, I mean, I prefer them as a fish. They're more beautiful. This one also, you can see how the long hair is blowing with the wind, which is to make allusion to the seduction that women would use towards men with the hair. And you can see in the background that there is the boat with the fishermen, the sailors, that, or even Ulysses, if this one also makes reference to it, and how she's trying to get their attention. And there are also skulls in this painting, to showcase how they are not gonna be her first victims. Mermaids are also well known to lure sailors into the deep ocean with their beauty and beautiful voices. That's why we sometimes see the skulls. Here it's one of the paintings I also very much liked, and this one represents the Ulysses story, which is that he really wanted to hear the voices of the sirens, but he didn't want to end up at the bottom of the ocean. So what he did was to tell all his sailors to put wax in his ears so that they could be safe from them, and that they should tie him to this post so that he wouldn't fall for them. But again, he wanted the experience, and that's why we see this representation with all the mermaids going after him. The story is also that he really wanted to go after the mermaids, but because he was tired, he couldn't, and obviously no one helped him to actually go there. So it was kind of a horrible experience for him, because he couldn't follow his desire, but at the same time, that's the way he survived. He and his men survived the mermaids. And then we have this other version, which is again of Ulysses' story. And here we can see how it appears, the mermaid, the fish type of mermaid. And what is also curious about this other painting is that there are two women, but they have women's body, and they are also trying to get him to follow them. There is a story that I don't remember if it was Ulysses or if it was someone else that was also able to survive the mermaids, and because they survived, because it was Ulysses and someone else, the mermaids decide to stop their lives, which is funny again, because once again we see that if a woman cannot get the man's attention, then she has no purpose in this life. I mean, that's why it's the hilarious part of all of this,